A tiny bobcat kitten thinks a German shepherd is his mom. But what happens next made the whole town cry. On a stormy night, a helpless wild kitten is found clinging to life against all odds. A loyal dog steps in not as a protector, but as something far more shocking. The two form an impossible bond that no one believed could exist. But when powerful voices demand they be torn apart, a fight begins. Secrets are exposed, danger closes in, and the truth about survival, love, and loyalty is pushed to the edge. How far would you go to protect the family you weren't supposed to have? And what happens when the world tries to rip it away? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. The Montana rain pelted against Clara Whitmore's truck windshield. As she squinted through the darkness, her wipers working overtime against the downpour. After 12 hours of patrolling the wilderness, her bones ached with exhaustion. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty passenger seat where her husband Tom used to sit. Before the accident 3 years ago, another flash lit up the roadside ditch and something caught her eye, a small, spotted form huddled against the earth. Clara's trained ranger instincts made her tap the brakes. She pulled over, grabbing her flashlight from the glove compartment. "Please don't be injured," she whispered, stepping out into the bitter rain. The beam of her flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a tiny bobcat kitten, soaked to the bone and shivering violently. Its golden eyes reflected her light. Wide with terror, Clara's heart clenched. Protocol was clear. Wild animals should be left alone unless critically injured. But this little one couldn't be more than a few weeks old. Without its mother, it wouldn't survive the night in this weather. "I know I shouldn't," she said softly, removing her jacket. The kitten made no attempt to run as she approached, too weak from cold and hunger. With gentle hands, she wrapped it in her jacket, cradling it against her chest. Its tiny heart raced against her palm. Back in the truck, Clara cranked up the heat. "Just until morning," she told herself firmly. "Then we'll figure out what to do." The kitten remained eerily still in her lap as she drove the remaining miles home. Its only movement the shallow rise and fall of its chest. When Clara's headlights swept across her small ranch house, she saw a ranger's alert face in the window. The German shepherd's tail began wagging the moment she stepped through the door. But he froze when he caught sight of her bundle. "Easy, boy," Clara cautioned, unsure how her loyal companion would react to a wild animal in their home. She'd had Ranger since he was a puppy, trained him specifically as her patrol partner. He was gentle by nature, but still, to her amazement, Ranger's ears perked forward with interest. Not aggression. He approached slowly, nose twitching as he investigated the trembling package in her arms. The bobcat kitten peeked out from the folds of her jacket, meeting Ranger's amber gaze with its own golden one. Clara held her breath, ready to intervene, but Ranger simply gave a soft whine and gently nuzzled the kitten's head. The tiny wildcat didn't flinch. "Well, I'll be," Clara whispered, watching in wonder as her tough patrol dog transformed into something entirely different. "Protector." She set up a makeshift bed of towels near the fireplace, placing the kitten there while she started a fire to ward off the chill. But before she could step away, Ranger had already settled himself around the little bundle, curling his body into a protective half-moon. The kitten, instead of showing fear, snuggled deeper into Ranger's warm fur. Clara sank into her armchair, stunned by the scene before her. Her practical mind told her this was temporary, that wild animals belonged in the wild. But her heart saw something else, a miracle of compassion that transcended the natural order of things. "Ash," she said suddenly, the name coming to her. As she watched the kitten's gray-spotted fur catch the firelight, "We'll call you Ash, little one, just for tonight." Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor in apparent approval. Clara watched as he began to gently groom the kitten's matted fur, just as a mother would. The sight brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Since Tom's death, her life had been a careful routine of work and solitude, with only Ranger for company. Now, in the span of an hour, something wild and fragile had broken through that shell of loneliness. The storm raged on outside, but in the warm circle of firelight, Clara witnessed something extraordinary. Ash's trembling gradually ceased as he drifted into sleep, tucked securely against Ranger's chest. The big shepherd kept constant vigil, his protective instinct awakened by this tiny orphan from the wilderness. Clara knew there would be consequences to face in the morning. She knew the proper protocols, the forms to file, the regulations about wildlife rehabilitation. But watching Ranger tend to this abandoned creature with such gentle devotion made all those rules seem suddenly less important than the simple act of saving a life. "What are we getting ourselves into, Ranger?" she whispered. The dog's eyes met hers across the firelight, full of wisdom and unwavering loyalty. In that moment, Clara understood that sometimes the heart knows better than any rule book. Sometimes compassion demands that we take risks, even if we're not sure where they might lead. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, washing away the storm's remnants. Clara sat at her kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the number for the Wildlife Rescue Center she'd pulled up. It should have been a simple call to make. Instead, her finger hovered uncertainly over the keypad as she watched the scene unfolding on her living room floor. Ranger lay stretched out on his side, patient and still, while Ash tentatively pawed at a bowl of milk replacement formula Clara had mixed up. The tiny bobcat wouldn't go near the bowl unless Ranger was right there. As if drawing courage from the big dog's presence, every few laps, Ash would glance up at Ranger, seeking reassurance. "This isn't natural," Clara murmured to herself, but she couldn't deny the touching nature of their bond. When she tried to separate them earlier, moving Ash to a quiet corner to feed, the kitten had trembled and refused to eat. Only when Ranger patted over and settled nearby did Ash finally accept nourishment. The morning light streaming through her windows illuminated the unlikely pair, and Clara found herself lowering the phone. Just until he's stronger, she told herself, a few days at most. But word spread quickly in their small Montana community. That very afternoon, Ellen Martinez from the general store spotted Ranger in the front yard with what appeared to be a spotted kitten trailing behind him. By evening, Clara's phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mike Thompson. "Heard you've got yourself an interesting house guest," the message read. "Sarah saw it through your window when she was jogging past. Says it's the sweetest thing she's ever seen." Clara's stomach tightened. She trusted her neighbors. But the more people who knew about Ash, the greater the risk of official attention. As a ranger herself, she knew the regulations inside and out. Wild animals needed professional rehabilitation, not well-meaning amateurs. Yet watching Ranger and Ash together made her question everything she thought she knew. The big shepherd had taken to sleeping curled around the kitten, sharing his body. Heat through the night, he seemed to sense when Ash needed space, backing away if the kitten showed signs of stress, only to return the moment Ash started searching for him. The following morning, Clara heard voices outside while she was preparing Ash's formula. Through her kitchen window, she saw Betty Wilson and her daughter stopped on the sidewalk, pointing toward her house. Betty caught her eye and waved enthusiastically. "Clara, honey," Betty called out when Clara reluctantly opened her door. "We just had to stop by. Everyone's talking about your special rescue. How wonderful that your ranger has taken such a shine to it." "It's temporary," Clara said quickly, forcing a smile, "just until the little one is strong enough for proper rehabilitation." "Oh, but they look so perfect together," Betty's daughter chimed in. "Like they were meant to find each other." Clara nodded politely but felt her anxiety rising. Perfect or not, she was breaking protocol with every passing hour. That evening, as she watched Ranger teaching Ash to play, gently batting a small ball back and forth with his paw, while the kitten pounced and stumbled after it, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. Since Tom's death, her house had felt too quiet, too empty. Now it was filled with soft purrs and the click of Ranger's nails on the hardwood, as he patiently shepherded his tiny charge. The sound of Ash's excited chirps when Ranger returned from their brief backyard breaks made her smile despite herself. But not everyone shared the enchantment. At the grocery store the next day, Clara overheard whispers between two women in the produce section. "A wild animal in her house, with her dog, seems irresponsible if you ask me. And her being a ranger and all. Shouldn't she know better?" Clara gripped her shopping basket tighter, hurrying past them. Their words echoed her own doubts. The voice of duty. That grew harder to ignore. She knew what the protocol manual would say. Document, report, transfer to professionals. The rules existed for good reasons, both for human safety and proper wildlife care. Yet every time she steeled herself to make that call, something stopped her. Maybe it was the way Ash's golden eyes tracked Ranger's every movement, or how the shepherd maintained his gentle vigilance, showing a side of himself Clara had never seen before. In those quiet moments watching them together, she felt her own grief and loneliness softening, replaced by something warm and unexpected. Still, she couldn't shake the unease that crept in with every curious neighbor, every sideways glance, every whispered comment. She was walking a dangerous line between compassion and duty, between what her heart knew was right and what her badge demanded of her. That night, as Ranger and Ash slept peacefully by the fireplace, Clara sat in her armchair, wrestling with her conscience. The simple rescue she'd intended had become something far more complicated. She found herself caught between the miracle unfolding in her living room and the growing weight of public attention, between her instinct to protect and her obligation to follow the rules. The morning sun had barely cleared the mountains when a sharp knock echoed through Clara's house. Through the window, she spotted Dale Kincaid's Forest Service truck parked in her driveway, its official lettering gleaming. Her heart sank as she quickly ushered Ranger and Ash into her bedroom. "Coming," she called out, smoothing her shirt and taking a deep breath before opening the door. Dale Kincaid stood on her porch, his Ranger supervisor uniform pressed crisp and neat, his expression stern beneath his gray hair. "Clara," he said flatly, "we need to talk." She stepped aside to let him in, noting how his eyes scanned her living room. A small bowl of formula sat on the coffee table, and a few cat toys were scattered across the floor. "I've been hearing some interesting stories," Dale said, remaining standing even when Clara gestured toward the couch. "About a certain wild animal you've taken in. A bobcat kitten. If the rumors are correct." Clara clasped her hands together. "Dale, I can explain. He was dying in that storm, all alone." "Stop right there." Dale held up his hand. "You know the protocols. Every ranger knows them. Wild predators cannot be domesticated. Clara, period." From the bedroom came a soft thump, followed by Ranger's low whine. Dale's eyes narrowed as he turned toward the sound. "Is that where you're keeping it?" His voice grew colder. "Have any idea how many regulations you're violating? The liability issues alone could cost the department thousands." "He's thriving," Clara protested. "Ranger has been amazing with him. You should see." "I don't need to see anything except you following proper procedure." Dale cut her off again. "This isn't a Disney movie, Clara. That animal is a wild predator, not a house pet. Your dog's current behavior is irrelevant." Clara felt her face flush. "With all due respect, sir, you haven't even let me be perfectly clear," Dale said, his voice dropping. "Your career is on the line here. 20 years of service. Thrown away for what? A misguided attempt to play Mother Nature." Through her living room window, Clara noticed a sleek black SUV driving past her house slowly. Behind the tinted windows, she caught a glimpse of Grant Holloway's face, watching intently. The wealthy developer had been pushing to build a luxury hunting lodge on protected land, and Clara had been one of his strongest opponents. Dale followed her gaze. "Oh yes, word is spreading fast. Holloway's been quite vocal about his concerns regarding ranger conduct lately. Just yesterday at the town council meeting, he made several comments about reckless behavior in the ranger service." Clara's stomach tightened. She knew Holloway would use any ammunition he could find to discredit her and push his development plans forward. "He's trying to use this against me," she said quietly. "You handed him the weapon yourself." Dale replied, "I'm giving you 24 hours to handle this properly. Call wildlife rescue. Get that animal to qualified rehabilitation specialist. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to begin formal disciplinary proceedings." A loud meow came from the bedroom, followed by the sound of Ranger's gentle answering bark. Clara watched Dale's face harden at the noise. 24 hours, he repeated, turning toward the door. "Don't make me regret giving you that much time." After Dale left, Clara sank onto her couch, hands shaking. Through her window, she saw Holloway's SUV make another slow pass. He wasn't even trying to hide his interest anymore. When she opened her bedroom door, the sight that greeted her made her throat tight. Ranger lay curled on her bed, Ash nestled against his belly. The shepherd had been cleaning the kitten, his tongue gently smoothing the spotted fur. Ash's eyes were half closed in contentment, his tiny paw resting trustingly on Ranger's nose. "What am I supposed to do?" Clara whispered. Sitting beside them, Ranger lifted his head, his amber eyes full of concern. He'd been her rock since Tom's death, and now he'd become a surrogate mother to this fragile wild creature. Ash stirred and chirped, stumbling over Ranger's paws to reach Clara. The kitten had grown stronger in just these few days, his movements more coordinated, his appetite healthy, but only when Ranger was nearby. The bond between them was undeniable. Clara picked up her phone. Wildlife Rescue's number still saved in her contacts. Her finger hovered over it as Ash batted playfully at Ranger's tail. The shepherd watched the kitten with patient devotion, adjusting his movements to match the little one's clumsy attempts at play. The rules were clear. Her career, the one thing she had left after losing Tom, hung in the balance. But as she watched Ranger teaching Ash how to navigate their domestic world with gentle guidance, she realized some bonds transcended human regulations. The system wasn't designed for exceptions like this. For moments when nature itself seemed to rewrite its own rules, she set the phone down without making the call, knowing she was choosing a harder path. Outside, Holloway's SUV made one more pass, a reminder of the forces aligning against her. But inside her home, watching Ranger nudge Ash back toward his formula bowl, Clara felt a quiet certainty settle over her. Some things were worth fighting. For the Montana afternoon sun beat down on Clara's backyard as she hung laundry on the line, keeping one eye on Ranger and Ash playing near the back door. The kitten had grown stronger over the past week, his playful nature emerging more each day. Ranger watched over his small charge with patient dedication, correcting Ash's more wild impulses with gentle nudges. "Stay close to the house," Clara called out, though she knew Ranger would keep the kitten safe. She turned back to her laundry basket, shaking out a damp sheet. A butterfly fluttered past, catching Ash's attention. The kitten's spotted ears perked up, his golden eyes tracking the insect's path. Before Ranger could react, Ash darted after it, squeezing through a small gap under the fence that Clara hadn't noticed. No. Clara dropped the sheet, rushing toward the fence. Ranger was already racing alongside it, trying to find a way through. The dog's worried whines made Clara's heart pound faster as she ran around to the front yard. She emerged just in time to see Ash skitter across her front lawn, straight towards men climbing out of a black SUV parked at the curb. Clara recognized them as Holloway's security team, the ones who patrolled his development sites. "Well, look what we have here," the taller man sneered, taking a step toward the frightened kitten. "The famous illegal pet we've been hearing about." Ash froze, his small body trembling as the men moved to circle him. Ranger burst around the corner of the house, hackles raised. "Poor little thing," the second man taunted, pulling out his phone to record. "Barely bigger than a house cat. Some dangerous predator you are." Clara sprinted across the lawn. "Get away from him." The first man took another step toward Ash, raising his boot. "Maybe we should show everyone just how dangerous this creature really is." Ranger's warning growl turned into a fierce snarl. The shepherd launched forward, positioning himself between the men and the kitten, teeth bared. Clara had never seen her gentle dog look so threatening. "Call off your mutt," the second man shouted, stumbling backward. Clara didn't hesitate. She dove forward, scooping up Ash with one hand while placing her other hand on Ranger's collar. She pulled both animals close, using her body as a shield. "Back off," she ordered, her voice shaking, but firm. "Now, is there a problem here?" Dale Kincaid's voice cut through the tension. Clara turned to see her supervisor striding across the lawn, Holloway himself following close behind. "Just documenting a public safety hazard," Holloway said smoothly, gesturing to his men. "That wild animal nearly attacked my employees." "That's a lie," Clara protested, still holding Ash protectively. The kitten trembled against her chest while Ranger pressed against her legs. Still growling softly, Dale's face was grim as he surveyed the scene. "The animal is loose in a residential area. Clara, this is exactly what I warned you about. He just slipped out for a moment," Clara explained desperately. Ranger was watching him. He wasn't in any danger until these men what? Happened to be driving by. Holloway interrupted. "This is a public street, Ms. Whitmore. My men have every right to be here, and that animal's presence poses a clear threat to public safety." Dale nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Clara, but this has gone far enough. That bobcat needs to be taken to a proper wildlife facility immediately." Clara felt the world tilting beneath her feet. "Please, just let me." "No more chances," Dale cut her off. "I'll call the wildlife center right now. They can take him today." Holloway's satisfied smirk made Clara's blood boil, but she knew she was trapped. One glance at Dale's stern expression told her she had run out of options. 2 hours later, Clara stood in her driveway, holding a pet carrier containing a frightened Ash. The wildlife center's van was parked behind her truck, waiting. Ranger sat at her feet, whining softly as he nosed at the carrier. "It's time," the wildlife officer said gently. Clara knelt down next to Ranger, letting him peek through the carrier's door one last time. Ash reached out with one small paw, touching the shepherd's nose through the grate. Ranger's whimper broke Clara's heart. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them both, standing quickly before she could change her mind. She handed the carrier to the wildlife officer, then had to grab Ranger's collar as he tried to follow it to the van. As she watched the van drive away, Ranger's mournful whines echoed in her ears, a sound she knew would haunt her dreams. She stood in her driveway long after the van disappeared, one hand buried in Ranger's fur, feeling as though she had betrayed them both. From across the street, Holloway watched from his SUV, a triumphant smile playing at his lips. But Clara barely noticed him through her tears, focused only on Ranger's grief-stricken face as he stared down the empty road, where his adopted baby had disappeared. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the empty highway as Clara followed the wildlife center's van. Her hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles white with tension. Every few minutes, she caught glimpses of the carrier in the van ahead, and her heart ached knowing Ash was alone and frightened inside. Something wasn't right. During their brief stop for gas, Clara had noticed Ash's unusual lethargy. The normally active kitten lay curled in a tight ball, barely responding when she spoke to him. She tried to convince herself it was just stress from the separation, but maternal instinct, the same one that had made her stop on that rainy night, told her otherwise. The wildlife center sprawled across several acres, surrounded by tall pines. Clara parked next to the van, watching anxiously as they carried Ash inside. The reception area smelled of antiseptic and pine cleaner, its walls covered with educational posters about local wildlife. "I'd like to have our vet check him before processing the intake," Clara said to the staff member at the desk. "He seemed unusually quiet during transport." The young woman nodded, leading them to an examination room. Minutes stretched like hours until the veterinarian arrived. A kind-faced woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Dr. Martinez. Clara stood back, arms wrapped around herself. As the vet examined Ash, the kitten remained limp and unresponsive, even when offered food. "How long has he been refusing to eat?" Dr. Martinez asked, frowning. He's never refused before," Clara explained. "But he's only ever eaten with my dog present. Ranger, he's been like a mother to him since I found him." The vet's expression grew more concerned as she checked Ash's vital signs. "His temperature is low, and he's showing signs of severe stress. You mentioned a unique bonding situation with your dog." Clara nodded, describing how Ranger had taken to Ash immediately. How the kitten wouldn't eat unless the shepherd was nearby. As she spoke, Dr. Martinez's face became increasingly grave. "Ms. Whitmore, I've seen this before in very young wildlife. That bonds too strongly with surrogate parents," the vet explained gently. "Sometimes the attachment becomes so vital that separation can trigger a severe decline. They simply stop eating, stop fighting to survive." Clara's throat tightened. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that in my professional opinion, separating this kitten from his surrogate mother, your dog, could be fatal." Dr. Martinez sighed heavily. "But I also know the regulations. We're not allowed to return wild predators to private custody, no matter the circumstances." Clara sank into a nearby chair, her legs suddenly weak. "He'll die without Ranger." "It's very possible," the vet confirmed. "He is already showing significant signs of decline." Before Clara could respond, her phone buzzed. A local news notification popped up on her screen. "Controversial Ranger under fire. Wild predator threatens community safety." With trembling fingers, Clara opened the article. There was Holloway, quoted extensively about the dangers of reckless ranger behavior and the need for new management of the protected lands. He'd even included the video his men had taken, carefully edited to make it appear as though Ash had been threatening them. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This had never been about public safety. Holloway had been waiting for an opportunity like this, something he could use to discredit her, to push her out of her position. Without her standing in the way, who would stop him from developing the protected land he'd been eyeing for his hunting lodge? That manipulative bastard. Clara whispered, her sadness transforming into anger. She looked up at Dr. Martinez, who was still examining Ash. "This whole situation he orchestrated. He's using Ash to attack my credibility so he can build on protected land." The vet glanced at the article Clara held up. "I've heard about that proposed hunting lodge. It would destroy critical habitat for several endangered species, including local bobcat populations," Clara added bitterly. "He doesn't care about public safety. He just wants me out of the way." Dr. Martinez gently stroked Ash's head as the kitten huddled miserably in the corner of his carrier. "Unfortunately, knowing his motives doesn't change the regulations. I'm required by law to keep him here." Clara watched Ash's deteriorating condition, her heart breaking. The kitten who had been so full of life that morning, playing with Ranger in her backyard, now lay listless and defeated. She thought of Ranger at home, probably still watching the road, waiting for his baby to return. "How long?" she asked quietly. How long does he have if he stays here, separated from Ranger?" The vet's silence was answer enough. Clara stood up, her decision crystallizing. She wouldn't let Holloway win, not at the cost of an innocent life. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was up against. "Can I make a few calls?" she asked the vet. "There's something I need to check." Dr. Martinez nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I'll give you some privacy. But Clara," she paused at the door. "Whatever you're thinking, remember that these regulations exist for a reason. Breaking them has serious consequences. So does following them blindly." Clara responded, pulling out her phone. It was time to find out exactly what Holloway had planned for her beloved wilderness. Clara's fingers hovered over her phone, her brother's number staring back at her. 5 years had passed since they'd last spoken, since the argument after Tom's funeral, when Eli accused her of hiding from her grief in her work. The memory of his words still stung. You care more about your trees than your family. She pressed dial before she could change her mind. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Clara. Eli sounded surprised, maybe even worried. Is everything okay? I need your help, she said, her voice catching through the examination room window. She could see Dr. Martinez checking on Ash again. I know we haven't talked, but you're the only lawyer I trust. There was a long pause. Where are you? Wildlife Center. Just outside of town. Eli. I'm about to lose everything I've worked for, and an innocent creature might die because of it. 20 minutes later, Ellie's silver sedan pulled into the parking lot. Clara watched through the window as her brother stepped out, tall and proper in his business suit, looking more like their father than ever. His face was lined with concern as he approached the building. Clara met him at the door. They stood awkwardly for a moment before Eli broke the silence. You look tired, sis. It's been a rough day. She led him to the examination room where Ash lay curled in his carrier, barely moving. This is what it's all about. Eli peered at the Bobcat Kitten, his expression softening. Tell me everything. Clara explained the whole situation, finding Ash, Ranger's immediate bond with him, and Holloway's manipulation of events. As she spoke, Dr. Martinez brought in her laptop to show them footage from earlier that morning. Ranger. Gentle cleaning. Ash, the kitten responding only to the dog's presence. The bond is extraordinary, the vet explained. In 20 years of wildlife medicine, I've never seen anything quite like it. Eli watched the footage, his professional demeanor cracking. And this developer, Holloway, he's using the situation to push you out. He wants the protected land for his hunting lodge, Claire confirmed. I've been blocking his permits for months because the environmental impact would be devastating. Show me everything you have on his previous deals, Eli said, pulling out his laptop. Every permit application, every environmental study. They spent the next hour reviewing documents. Ellie's face grew darker as patterns emerged. Other rangers who had mysteriously resigned after opposing Holloway's projects, environmental studies that seemed suspiciously favorable. There's something not right here, Eli muttered, typing rapidly. These impact studies, they're all conducted by the same consulting firm. And look at this. The firm was incorporated just 2 weeks before Holloway's first application. A shell company. Clara leaned closer. Almost certainly. He's having his own people conduct the environmental studies. Eli shook his head. It's clever, but it's fraud if we can prove it. Clara watched her brother work, remembering how he'd always fought for what he believed was right, even as a kid. Maybe that's why their falling out had hurt so much. They were too alike, too stubborn. I'm sorry, she said softly, about what happened after Tom died. You were right, I did hide in my work. I couldn't face the emptiness at home. Ellie's fingers stilled on the keyboard. I'm sorry too. I was angry and scared of losing you like we lost him. He looked up at her. But right now, we need to focus on stopping Holloway before he does more damage. A notification popped up on Clara's phone. Her heart sank as she read it. He's called a town hall meeting for tomorrow morning. The announcement says he's going to address public safety concerns about wildlife management in our community. He's making his move, Eli said grimly. He'll try to turn the whole town against you. What can we do? We don't have time to prove the fraud before then. Eli looked thoughtfully at Ash, then back at the footage of Ranger. Maybe we don't have to. Sometimes the simplest truth is the most powerful. He turned to Dr. Martinez. Would you be willing to testify about what you've observed here? About the unique bond and the medical consequences of separation? The vet nodded firmly. Absolutely. What I'm seeing here isn't just unusual. It's a scientific phenomenon that deserves study, not destruction. Claire felt a spark of hope for the first time since arriving at the center. So we fight back at the town hall. We fight back. Eli confirmed, reaching over to squeeze her hand. But first, we need to make some calls. I know a few environmental lawyers who'd be very interested in Holloway's pattern of behavior. Through the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Claire watched as Dr. Martinez gently examined Ash again. The kitten's condition still deteriorating. Time was running out, but at least now she wasn't fighting alone. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Clara's phone buzzed with urgent messages. Multiple residents reported seeing a bobcat prowling through their yards, knocking over trash cans and terrorizing pets. Her heart sank as she read report after report. This isn't right, she muttered to Ranger, who sat alert beside her. Ash is still at the Wildlife Center. She called Dr. Martinez, who confirmed Ash hadn't moved from his enclosure. The kitten was too weak to even stand. As Clara drove toward the first reported sighting, She noticed Holloway's black SUV parked near the edge of town. His men lounged against the vehicle, looking far too pleased with themselves. Suddenly, screams erupted from the nearby hiking trail. Clara's radio crackled with panicked voices reporting a dangerous wild animal heading toward Miller's Cliff. She knew that area well, a treacherous outcropping with a 100-foot drop. "It's a setup," she told Ranger, who whined in agreement. "They're trying to create panic before the town hall." They arrived at the trailhead to find hikers running down the path, faces pale with fear. Clara grabbed her gear and started up the trail, Ranger at her heels. The morning air was thick with fog, making visibility poor. Perfect conditions for Holloway's scheme. Halfway up, she heard barking, not Rangers, but unfamiliar dogs. Through the mist, she spotted two of Holloway's men with hunting dogs, driving something toward the cliff's edge. Her blood ran cold when she realized what was happening. They had somehow gotten Ash from the wildlife center. The kitten's terrified cry confirmed her fears. Clara broke into a run, her boots sliding on loose gravel. Ranger surged ahead, his protective instinct taking over. The path narrowed dangerously as they approached the cliff face. "Stop," Clara shouted at Holloway's men. "You're driving them into a trap." They ignored her, continuing to push Ash and Ranger toward the edge. The fog parted enough for Clara to see the desperate situation. Ranger standing protectively over Ash, both of them cornered on a narrow ledge. Below, jagged rocks disappeared into the mist. Clara didn't hesitate. She left the main trail, scrambling onto the cliff face itself. Loose rocks showered down as she climbed, each step a gamble between solid ground and crumbling stone. Her fingers found small holds in the rock while her feet searched for perches. "Hold on," she called to Ranger and Ash. 20 feet of treacherous terrain separated them. A rock gave way under her right foot, sending her sliding. Clara's heart jumped into her throat as she caught herself on a jutting stone, her body dangling precariously. The drop below seemed endless. She could hear Holloway's men laughing, thinking they had won. But Clara thought of all the times she'd walked these trails with Tom, of his voice teaching her to trust her instincts. She found another foothold and pushed upward, ignoring the sting of scraped palms and the trembling in her legs. Just as she reached the ledge where Ranger and Ash huddled, a familiar voice rang out from above. "Gran Holloway," Ellie's voice carried across the cliff face. "Step away from the edge and call off your men." Clara looked up to see her brother standing at the cliff's top, accompanied by state police officers and several people in suits. He held up a thick folder of documents. "We have proof of your fraudulent environmental studies," Eli continued, "and witness statements about this morning's staged incident. The FBI is very interested in your pattern of intimidation and corruption." Holloway's face contorted with rage. "You have nothing. We have everything," Eli replied calmly, "including security footage from the wildlife center showing your men breaking in to take the Bobcat Kitten." "It's over, Holloway." Clara watched as police officers moved in to secure Holloway's men. She turned her attention back to Ranger and Ash, still balanced precariously on the ledge. The dog stood steady, a living shield between the kitten and danger. Clara inched closer, speaking softly to both animals. "Easy now," she murmured. "Let's get you both to safety." With infinite care, she gathered Ash in one arm while keeping her other hand firmly gripped on the rock face. Ranger stayed close, matching her movements as they slowly made their way back to solid ground. Above, she could hear Holloway being read his rights. When they finally reached the main trail, Clara's legs gave out. She sat heavily on a boulder, cradling Ash while Ranger pressed against her side. The kitten was trembling, but alive, still, clinging to life despite everything. Eli jogged down to meet them, his lawyer's composure cracking as he saw his sister's scratched and bleeding hands. "You could have died up there," he said softly. Clara looked at Ash, then at Ranger, thinking of the strange family they had become. "Some things are worth the risk," she replied. Police officers began documenting the scene while animal control experts arrived to safely transport Ash back to the wildlife center. The morning sun finally broke through the fog, illuminating the cliff face that had nearly claimed them all. Clara held Ash close, her heart still racing from the perilous climb. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up. Gran Holloway emerged from the fog, his expensive suit dusty and disheveled. What made her blood run cold was the hunting rifle in his hands. "You've ruined everything," he snarled, his carefully maintained facade crumbling. The weapon trembled in his white-knuckled grip. "Years of planning, millions invested, all destroyed because you couldn't follow simple rules." Ranger's reaction was immediate. The German shepherd moved with fluid grace, positioning himself between Clara and the rifle. His lips pulled back, revealing sharp teeth, and a deep growl rumbled from his chest. Clara had never seen her gentle companion look so fierce. "Put the gun down," Holloway, Clara said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. She shifted Ash behind her, shielding the weakened kitten with her body. You're only making things worse for yourself. Worse? Holloway's laugh was harsh and brittle. I've lost everything because of you and these worthless animals. My reputation, my investors, all gone. He raised the rifle, aiming it directly at Ranger. Maybe it's time I cut my losses. Movement caught Clara's eye. Eli had appeared on the ridge above them, his phone held high, recording everything. Holloway was too focused on Clara to notice. Think about what you're doing, Clara said, drawing Holloway's attention. Right now, you're facing charges for fraud and animal cruelty. But this? She gestured to the rifle. This is a whole different level. Shut up, Holloway shouted, taking a step forward. Ranger's growl intensified, his powerful body coiled and ready to spring. I built everything I have from nothing. I won't let some bleeding heart Ranger and her mutts destroy it all. Ellie's voice cut through the tension. It's all on video, Holloway. Every threat, every moment. He held up his phone, still recording. Want to add armed assault to those federal charges. Holloway spun toward the new voice, his rifle swinging wildly. Ranger seized the moment, lunging forward with explosive power. His teeth clamped down on Holloway's arm, forcing him to drop the weapon. The rifle clattered against the rocks as Holloway screamed in pain and fury. Get this beast off me, he shrieked, trying to shake free of Ranger's grip. The dog held firm, not breaking skin, but maintaining absolute control. Clara moved swiftly, kicking the rifle well out of reach. Ranger, hold, she commanded. The shepherd maintained his grip while police officers, alerted by the commotion, rushed onto the scene. Grand Holloway, one officer announced, drawing his weapon, you're under arrest. Tell your men to stand down and put your hands where we can see them. Ranger released his hold only when Clara gave the command. He backed away, returning to his protective stance near Clara and Ash. Holloway's men, seeing their boss surrounded, dropped their threatening postures. As the officers moved in with handcuffs. Holloway's composure completely shattered. You don't understand what you're doing, he shouted at Clara. That land is worth millions. The lodge would have brought jobs, tourism. I was doing this town a favor by destroying protected habitat, by threatening people's lives. Clara shook her head. The only favor you've done is showing everyone exactly who you are. Eli approached, still recording as the officers secured Holloway. I've sent copies of this video to the state police in my office, along with the documentation we gathered. It paints quite a picture of corruption and violence. The developers' face twisted with hatred as the officers led him away. This isn't over, he spat. You'll regret this, all of you. Actually, it is over, Eli replied calmly. Your investors are already distancing themselves. The evidence of your illegal activities is overwhelming. And now we have video proof of armed assault. You're finished, Holloway. Clara watched us. Holloway was escorted down the trail, his previous power and arrogance replaced by impotent rage. Ranger pressed against her leg, his earlier fierceness melting into his usual gentle demeanor. Ash stirred in her arms, letting out a tiny mew. That was quite a performance, Eli said, putting away his phone. He looked at Ranger with newfound respect. Especially from your protector here. Clara knelt down, hugging Ranger close. He's always known who needed protecting, she said softly, remembering all the nights he'd stood guard over Ash. Even when I wasn't sure myself. The morning sun finally broke through completely, burning away the last wisps of fog. Below them, they could see police vehicles with flashing lights surrounding Holloway's SUV. The developer's carefully constructed world was crumbling, brought down not by corporate rivals or political enemies, but by a Ranger, her dog, and a fragile Bobcat Kitten. The next few days moved at a dizzying pace. State police investigators descended on Holloway's offices, carrying out boxes of documents that revealed the full scope of his corrupt dealings. Local news vans lined the streets as reporters covered the shocking fall of the once powerful developer. Claire watched from her porch as Dale Kincaid emerged from the ranger station, escorted by 2 officers. His shoulders sagged beneath his pristine uniform as cameras flashed. The investigation had uncovered years of kickbacks, money paid to look the other way while Holloway violated environmental regulations. I never thought Dale would go down like this, Clara murmured to Ranger, who sat alertly beside her. The shepherd's tail thumped against the wooden boards in response. Inside, Ash dozed in his favorite spot, a soft blanket near the fireplace. The kitten had grown stronger since returning home, his golden eyes brighter and his spotted coat glossier. Clara smiled, remembering the morning's court hearing that had changed everything. The judge, a stern-faced woman with kind eyes, had listened. carefully to testimony from wildlife experts, including the veterinarian who had treated Ash. They spoke of the unique bond between Ranger and the Bobcat Kitten, explaining how this unconventional relationship had literally saved Ash's life. Your Honor, the vet had testified, separating them now would likely result in the kitten's death. The maternal bond that is formed with the shepherd is unprecedented but undeniable. In my professional opinion, this arrangement should continue until the kitten is strong enough for release. Clara had held her breath, waiting for the judgment. When it came, the relief had brought tears to her eyes. Given the extraordinary circumstances, the judge had declared, this court grants special permission for the Bobcat Kitten known as Ash to remain under Ranger Clara Whitmore's care, with her shepherd dog Ranger serving as surrogate mother, until such time as the animal is deemed ready for return to its natural habitat. Now, watching Ash stretch and pad over to curl up against Ranger's warm fur, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. She had risked everything, her career, her reputation, even her safety, because her heart told her it was right. The rules that had seemed so rigid had bent in the face of something more powerful, love. A car door slammed, pulling Clara from her thoughts. Eli climbed the porch steps, his lawyer's briefcase in hand, but his tie loosened. The stiffness that had marked their early reunions had softened into something warmer. Just finished filing the last paperwork, he said, settling into the chair. Beside her, Holloway's going away for a long time. The evidence was overwhelming: fraud, corruption, assault with a deadly weapon, not to mention the environmental violations. Clara nodded, watching as Ranger gently nuzzled Ash's head. And Dale, resigned this morning. He'll face charges too, but they'll be lighter since he cooperated. Eli paused, studying his sister's face. You know, I used to think your dedication to this job was a way of running from family, from dealing with Dad's death, from moving forward. Eli, Clara started, but he held up his hand. Let me finish. I was wrong. Watching you fight for Ash, seeing how you've built this unlikely family, it made me understand. Your compassion isn't weakness, it's your strength. He reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm sorry I couldn't see that before. Tears pricked at Clara's eyes. The distance between them, built over years of misunderstanding, began to close. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too, sis. Eli smiled, then chuckled as Ash wobbled over to investigate his shoes. Though I have to admit, when you told me you needed legal help because your dog adopted a bobcat, I thought you'd finally lost it. Clara laughed, the sound carrying across the yard where spring flowers were beginning to bloom. Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the most unlikely connections turn out to be exactly what we need. Inside, the phone rang, the Ranger station calling about her next shift. Clara stood, straightening her uniform. The badge that had once felt heavy with rules and regulations now shone with a different purpose. She had learned that true protection sometimes meant looking beyond the letter of the law to its spirit. Ranger rose too, stretching before gently herding Ash back toward his blanket. The kitten went willingly, trust evident in every movement. They had all changed. Clara, Eli, even Ranger. Love had reshaped them, proving stronger than fear, more enduring than rules, more powerful than greed. Time for work, Eli asked, standing. Time to protect what matters, Clara answered, watching as Ranger settled beside Ash, ever the vigilant guardian. The sight filled her heart with gratitude for second chances, for healing bonds, and for the unexpected ways that love could transform both the wild and tame hearts among them. The Montana summer settled into a gentle rhythm, each day bringing new moments of wonder to Clara's unlikely family. The morning sun would find Ranger and Ash curled together on their favorite spot near the window, the Bobcat Kitten's spotted fur mingling with the shepherd's thick coat. In these quiet moments, Clara marveled at how natural their bond had become. Ash grew stronger with each passing week, his once fragile frame filled out, his movements becoming more confident as he explored the house under Ranger's watchful eye. The shepherd never strayed far, maintaining the same protective instinct that had emerged on that stormy night months ago. When Ash would stumble during play, Ranger would be there instantly, nudging him back to his feet with a gentle touch. The healing extended beyond just Ash and Ranger. Clara and Eli had begun rebuilding their relationship, spending evenings on the porch sharing stories they'd missed from their years apart. Sometimes they talked about their father, memories that had once been too painful to touch now bringing bittersweet smiles. Remember how Dad used to take us camping? Eli asked one afternoon, his coffee growing cold as he lost himself in the memory. He always said nature had its own way of bringing people together. Clara nodded, watching as Ranger herded Ash away from a butterfly he'd been stalking too enthusiastically. He would have loved this, she said softly. All of it, even the crazy parts, especially the crazy parts, Eli corrected with a laugh. He always did root for the underdogs. Their conversations grew easier, the old wounds gradually mending. They discovered that their years apart hadn't changed their core connection. It had just been buried under misunderstanding and grief now. Watching Ash and Ranger's unlikely bond, they found inspiration to forge their own path back to family. One particularly beautiful evening, as the Montana sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Clara sat on her porch, wrapped in her father's old flannel shirt. Ranger lay in the grass nearby. Ash nestled against him as always. The kitten had dozed off, one paw draped over Ranger's nose. While the shepherd maintained his usual vigilant watch, Clara felt tears well up in her eyes. But these were different from the ones she'd shed during the difficult days of the fight. With Holloway, these were tears of joy, of profound gratitude for the healing that had touched every aspect of her life. Quite a sight, isn't it? Ellie's voice came from behind her as he stepped onto the porch, carrying the steaming mugs of tea. Clara accepted one with a grateful smile. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real, she admitted. That night in the storm, when I found Ash, I never imagined where it would lead. To family, Eli said simply, settling into the chair beside her. Maybe not the conventional kind, but then again, when have you ever done things the conventional way? They shared a quiet laugh, watching as Ash stirred in his sleep, pressing closer to Ranger's warm fur. The shepherd adjusted his position slightly to accommodate the kitten, never opening his eyes but instinctively protecting his charge. You. No, Clara said thoughtfully. I spent so many years thinking I had to choose between duty and compassion, between rules and what my heart knew was right. She gestured toward Ranger and Ash. But looking at them, I realized that sometimes the most powerful duty we have is to love. Eli reached over and squeezed her hand. Dad always said you had the biggest heart of anyone he knew. He was right. The sunset deepened, casting long shadows across the yard. In the golden light, Clara could see the truth of what they had all become. Not just a ranger and her dog, not just a sister and brother healing old wounds, not just a wild creature finding safety in unlikely places. They had become something more, a family forged in challenge, strengthened by love, and bound together by the courage to believe in impossible things. As darkness settled over the Montana landscape, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. What had started with a simple act of compassion on a stormy night had blossomed into something profound. In saving Ash, she had found her own redemption, her own healing. In defying convention, she had discovered a deeper truth about family, that it could be found in the most unexpected places, built from the most unlikely bonds. Ranger lifted his head slightly, meeting Clara's gaze with those intelligent amber eyes. In that moment, she saw reflected back all the love, trust, and loyalty that had carried them through their darkest hours. Ash stirred again, making the tiny chirping sound that had become his signature expression of contentment. This was more than victory over those who had tried to tear them apart. It was proof that love could bridge the widest gaps, heal the deepest wounds, and create family from the most improbable ingredients. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Clara whispered a quiet thank you to whatever fate had brought them all together. On that stormy night, setting in motion a story of hope, redemption, and the extraordinary power of unconditional love. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.